So Firearms Policy Coalition just put out a notice that they are actually suing the city of New York to allow individuals to carry loaded handguns in public for self-defense. So let's talk about this. But real quick before we jump into this video, if you think the only permit you need to carry a firearm is the Second Amendment, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Also want to give a shout out to one of the main sponsors of the channel, and that is Thorson's Customs. Thorson's Customs does not just put out California compliant features that we can go purchase. They also are very interested in Second Amendment advocacy and firearms advocacy, and they actually are very active in trying to abolish those laws which actually make their parts relevant in the state of California. So I cannot thank them enough for supporting this channel. If you guys would be interested in them, I'll go ahead and put links in the details to Thorson. Also want to thank another major sponsor of the channel, and that is Got Your Six. For just $2.99 a month, you get access to a lot of amazing things on their app. This includes up-to-date local, state, and national legislative information, as well as you have the ability to click this button called Initiate Freedom. So if your Second Amendment rights are ever violated through something like a red flag law, it sends out a notification to those members of your group. So it's a really neat app, and if you'd be interested in it, I'll also put a link down to Got Your Six in the details section. So Firearms Policy Coalition actually put this notice out on their social media accounts, and it was picked up quite a bit because it's pretty significant. Them, along with the Second Amendment Foundation, the SAF, announced that they are filing a lawsuit at the federal level against the city of New York, and it's targeted specifically on being able to allow individuals in New York City and surrounding areas to be able to carry loaded firearms, loaded handguns on their persons for self-defense. So I'll read to you real quick one of the notices that actually is on Firearms Policy's website, and I think it sums up very well what's going on in this case. But this case, if you're looking for a reference, it is going to be Greco v. the City of New York. Before we jump into reading this and talking about the news flash that Firearms Policy Coalition has, I just want to clarify, I'm not an expert on New York law, New York City law. I'm primarily focused a lot on California, but I do dabble a little bit on national stuff and other state stuff. So a lot of you are very familiar with not just the state of New York, but the city of New York at large. They have very restrictive gun laws, even more so than the state of California. Areas also like New Jersey are very much more restrictive than areas like California. So this is a big challenge because what it's attempting to do is unravel those very restrictive laws that are not just in the city of New York, but some of those surrounding areas as well. So the newsflash says, today Firearms Policy Coalition and the Second Amendment Foundation announced the filing of a new federal Second Amendment lawsuit that seeks to make it possible for all law-abiding people to carry a loaded handgun on their person in public self-defense in and around New York City. This case, Greco v. the City of New York, can be viewed at fpclegal.org, and I'll actually put a link down below to that case and to the complaint if you want to read it for yourself. The state of New York's laws make it a crime for a law-abiding individual to carry a loaded handgun outside of the home unless they have been issued a license to carry a handgun. Further, state law and city rules prevent individuals from obtaining a license because of further unconstitutional requirements, such as the proper cause requirement, among others. Working together, the state and city regulations amount to a total ban on carrying for the average law-abiding period. Consistent with other FPC and SAF cases, they argue that the Supreme Court's precedents take the policy choice off the table, and the Constitution itself provides the only justification necessary for law-abiding adults to exercise their fundamental individual right to bear arms in public. Like the lawsuits against the New Jersey's carry ban we filed earlier this week, we are suing New York City over the unconstitutional ban that prevents typical law-abiding people from carrying loaded, operable handguns on their person in public places, explained attorney Adam Kraut, FPC's Director of Legal Strategy. The state of New York and New York City have enacted broad criminal laws to prohibit the carry of handguns and then set up an unconstitutional requirement for the issuance of a license to carry, thus completely foreclosing the right. The case seeks to strike down these laws and allow New Yorkers and visitors to exercise the right to bear arms as they are entitled to. The right to bear arms must be available to all citizens in New York, not just wealthy people and celebrities, remarked SAF founder and executive vice president Alan Gottlieb. I probably got that wrong. Like other rights protected by the Constitution, that right is not limited to the confines of one's home. Ever since the SAF victory in McDonald v. the City of Chicago 10 years ago, the Second Amendment absolutely applies in New York. We will continue to sue whoever we need to as we restore the Second Amendment one lawsuit at a time. People in New York have the right to carry a loaded handgun in public for self-defense, and contrary to what Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio think, the Constitution fully applies to the city and state of New York, said FPC President Brandon Combs. The Supreme Court in Heller was clear that to bear arms means to carry them on the person in case of confrontation. Anything that denies a law-abiding citizen the ability to exercise that right is unconstitutional, period. So this case is really important, and it's important because it is another challenge to a comprehensive structure that a city and a state has put in place, which effectively bans an individual from being able to carry a loaded firearm for self-defense for their own protection. We saw something very similar and a very similar challenge pop up in Young v. Hawaii, where there was a structure in the county of Hawaii and also Hawaii's statutory structure at large prohibited that individual, Mr. Young, from being able to effectively either have a concealed weapons permit or an open carry permit, pretty much foreclosed him from being able to have any type of firearm on himself for his self-defense. So very similar, this case is a challenge to a comprehensive structure that the city of New York has and the state at large has, which pretty much forecloses these individuals within New York, within the New York City area, and within that city itself from being able to protect themselves and exercise their Second Amendment rights. And it's high-profile cases like this in very critical areas like this that you could see very much working their way up through the appellate court level and getting quickly to the Supreme Court and determine whether or not individuals actually have that right to carry concealed on them, carry loaded handguns in public for self-defense. Maybe it is time now, especially since we have Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court, for the Supreme Court to finally take up these critical Second Amendment questions, clarify what exactly the right entails, at least in their eyes, because we all know really what the framers and the founding fathers had in mind when they actually wrote the Second Amendment. When you look at the text of the Second Amendment as informed by the history and tradition of that time, it pretty much is clear that the framers never intended for these types of restrictions on our fundamental right to keep and bear arms. It's important cases like these and important organizations like Firearms Policy Coalition, like the Second Amendment Foundation, who are doing amazing things and trying to unravel these very horrible violations of our fundamental rights in the US. And if you're watching this in New York, I highly recommend you go support FPC and the Second Amendment Foundation, because this is a case which will directly affect you. I don't know how many New York viewers I have, but if you are a New York viewer, spread this around to those individuals that are in your area that you know are Second Amendment friendly, because it's important cases like this that you need to support, you need to get behind, because it will help you in the long run in unraveling these various restrictions that you have on your rights. We've seen a little bit of a movement here in the state of California where we've seen people get behind these various cases, and we've seen them start to slowly get unraveled, especially when they get up to the Ninth Circuit. We've seen them to start building momentum, unraveling these various infringements. And so it's cases like these, especially if you're in New York, you really need to get behind. So if you have any questions, go ahead and comment down below and I'll try to answer the best of my ability. Also, if you like this video and like support the channel, one of the best ways you can do that is like, comment, subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification bell, because that helps your channel analytics, helps us spread the word about the Second Amendment, also helps spread the word about things like this that are going on in our nation. I also want to thank another major supporter of the channel, and that is USCCA. USCCA provides legal protection for patriots like me and you, so if you ever find yourself in a defensive shooting and you ever have to deploy your weapon in self-defense, USCCA provides legal protection for you during your legal proceedings. So if you'd be interested in something like that, I'll go ahead and put a link to USCCA down the details section. So as always, thanks you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.